Bikes. It's estimated that over half the world can use one. It's the most accessible form of transportation in human history. You can start learning to use one as soon as you're 5 years old, and it's one of the most frequent pieces of stolen property on college campuses across America. My name is Thomas Ouellette, and I am a student at the University of South Florida, and here, bike theft is simply unparalleled. In a records request I got from the university, I saw that between the school years of 2021 and 2022, there were 111 reported bike thefts. To put that into perspective, other popular Florida university, the University of Central Florida, shows that in the same time span, there was a total of 35 thefts on their campus. University of North Florida records show that last year, only 24 bike thefts were reported. As of October 2022, the number of thefts at USF in the fall semester is at 48, meaning that if you include the other thefts that occurred throughout the span of this year alone, USF sits at 159 thefts reported in 2022 altogether. Having seen these numbers and knowing actual bike theft victims personally, it made me wonder why USF is so different. Why do bike thefts happen more here than anywhere else? I thought the answer would lie in an underfunded campus police department, but through my search, I saw that only scratches the surface. My first stop was the campus police department. They're the ones that deal with all thefts on campus. I spoke with Nicole Marchesano, the crime prevention officer at USF for the last 5 years. My first question to her was simple. Why is bike theft so high? And immediately she gave me an answer that opened a new range of possibility.
Very easy. I tell people all the time, this is crime of opportunity. And that's exactly what happens. If someone sees an opportunity to steal something, they're going to. And it's about really just educating the public when they first get here, and I think we need more of that.
That expression, crime of opportunity, it wasn't exactly something I had taken into consideration when I made my original theory. However, what Officer Marchesano said made sense. People could be stealing bikes because it was simply that easy. Turns out that most cord bike locks, the cheapest and most available, are also the easiest to break, and most bike theft victims use them without knowing the risk. Marchesano then explained the best kind of lock is something called a U-lock, and despite it being a fair bit pricier than your normal cord ones, it's the best at ensuring your bike is safe. Marchesano explains that, most of the time, to get rid of a U-lock, you need industrial-grade material.
I tell people all the time, it doesn't matter how much the bike costs. If you want that bike secured, you have to use the proper lock for it, and it has to be secured the proper way.
The lock is the first step a student should take to keep their bike safe. But even still, it isn't always enough. The university recommends registering your bike with them to help get it back in the event that it is stolen. But how does that work? How does registration help retrieve a stolen bike?
So now we have a decal process, which is completely voluntary, but what it does is it brings peace of mind back to the student. And it says, okay, now I could register that bicycle, and when I register that bicycle, what'll happen is I can't remember every single number attached to me. So peace of mind is we register the numbers for you. You register whatever you want, input it in there, and once it's done, that unique number, that decal that goes on the bike, is to you and you only. So if the bike gets lost or stolen, and we say, hey, did you have your bike registered? And you say, yeah, actually, I got an email the other day. You can look up that distinguishing number, and we'll find out everything that's been included, including the picture of the bicycle, what it looks like, so you don't even have that, again, peace of mind taken care of. That's what we need more of.
Okay, so that sounds helpful, right? The university police will have the complete write-up of your bike ready to go the moment it gets stolen. But what about the decal? How does that help?
We take that serial number and we put it in what's called FCIC, NCIC, and all that acronym is all about is we put it in a system for the state of Florida. So anywhere anywhere this person drops off or switches or sells to, majority of the time bikes are stolen. They don't get stolen permanently. They get stolen temporarily as kind of like dropping off and picking up. So they'll take it over to, say, a pawn shop. And there are certain rules and laws behind what a pawn shop can and can't sell right away. There's usually a temporary status, like a 15-day or a 30-day status where they're not allowed. But what they'll do is they'll showcase, see this beautiful bike right here? See this Cannondale? This is what's going to be for sale in 15 days. If you like it, let us know, come back and so on. And there's a reason behind that.
So essentially what it does is it marks the bike. If any place gets that bike and they run the number on the decal in their system, they'll be alerted that it was stolen. This sounds excellent, but in reality it seems to lean very heavily on people doing their due diligence and pawn shops doing the responsible thing. But what if, say, the police aren't helping, and you decide to look for your bike on your own and you actually succeed in finding it?
If you find it at a pawn shop, call us right away. Because if you know 100% that is your bicycle, we'll get it for you. Because the victim of the crime ends up being the pawn shop, which they know. Because when they take in bikes, what you have to do is you have to sign off. They do a thumbprint, they do a picture. So if somebody's handing a driver's license over, that person is the person responsible for having stolen property.
Once again, this sounds very promising. So long as you have your information, there's a solid chance at getting your bike back. Now, at this point, we had gone over a lot, so I asked Officer Marchesano to go through the process step by step, as if a theft had just been called in.
First we get the call, then we go to the person. You tell us exactly where the bike was stolen. So when I say crimes of opportunity, the kind of present that's given to the concentration of where these bikes are being stolen is at dorm rooms. A lot of that concentrated area has cameras from all sides that we have access to. So a lot of times we'll catch the person stealing it, we just don't know their name or the identifier. So what we'll do is we'll blow up that picture and we'll put it out to the community, and we'll let the community say, hey, does anybody know who this is? It could be somebody's brother, aunt, uncle, it doesn't matter. People tell on people all the time. I know exactly who that is. And then we identify and then we go get them.
Cameras were another thing that I figured would ensure thieves be brought to justice. Yet again, I didn't think hard enough. She was right. It's not like the thieves are driving up in cars with license plates or leaving behind business cards. Seeing them was easy. Identifying who they were? Nearly impossible. However, the last thing she said, the part about blowing up an image of a person, it seemed like such an effective strategy. But why wasn't it working? Even with all these systems in place, bike theft was so high at USF. Because of this, I wanted to get back to the numbers. I asked her about them a second time, and the answer she gave opened up what I initially thought might be a whole new realm of possibility.
And a lot of times the students will report their bikes stolen. So let's say they live in Pinnacle, but they forgot they went over to their friends at JPH one day 2-3 months ago, and they forgot they parked it over here. So a lot of times we have that too, where we report it as a theft, but they couldn't remember, and it comes back and it gets closed out. That's why I said when you get the statistics, some of these times a lot of these bike thefts are unfounded because it's just a relocation that they didn't realize where their bikes were.
Suddenly, a possible explanation. USF is a huge campus, and there's dozens of bike racks. It would make sense that a student might forget where they parked it and assume it was stolen. The interview ended shortly after. Marchesano had given me everything the school was doing, but I couldn't help but feel like I was missing something still. With all these programs, bike theft was still crazy. When I listened back on the interview, I heard the misplaced bike soundbite again, the one that you just heard. And this time, something else stuck out to me. It reminded me of something interesting I had seen in the USF bike records. The word unfounded. I had seen it before. Most of the investigations are labeled as inactive, and I mean 90% of them. But I remembered seeing a few outliers, particularly ones labeled as unfounded. Even if there wasn't a lot, it might bring the number down to a more reasonable total. As soon as I could, I opened the records up again to see for myself. And what I found was that of the 159 reported bike thefts as of current date, 2022, a total of 4 were unfounded. I could cross forgetfulness off the answer list. In addition to this, according to what Marchesano said, a registered bike should be in the systems all across the state of Florida, and at that point, wouldn't the hassle of stealing a bike outweigh the benefit? Thieves would have to sell it out of state. I needed to find more information. My next stop was a high-rated bike shop in a close vicinity to the campus, a shop at the University Mall by the name of Well Built Bikes. I had called ahead of time and met with operations manager Vicky Lauheed. Vicky has had a lot of experience in this field, and she's been to the shop for over 5 years, and she's sold a lot of bikes to a lot of students. My question to her, much like with Officer Marchesano, was simple. Why was bike theft so high? Disclaimer here, the place I interviewed her was very noisy, and it does come up in the recording.
Well, here's the thing about the USF specifically, because we get a lot of USF students in here, in the shop, and bikes are stolen all the time. It's a big campus. They only have so many police. They got a zillion bike racks all over the place. Lots of opportunity for people to go in. They are really, bike theft here is so bad in the area. We've had it happen in the shop. I tell every student, get a good lock.
There was that word again. Opportunity. Vicky had just corroborated Officer Marchesano's main point on why it happened so often, but it made me think about other schools. What was the difference? Was there less opportunity at UCF or UNF? I didn't think so. Maybe what makes USF different is its location.
I think it's the area of Tampa, but I can tell you that I get customers from South Tampa, I get them from North Tampa. Everybody's had the experience. I get them from other states. They all talk about how bad the bike theft is. It's just so easy to do. These kids are grabbing these bikes, they're selling them for 25 bucks. They don't care if it's a Trek or if it's a Huffy. They just want the quick cash and it's gone.
The location issue is possible, but she explained that it happens a lot all over Florida. I asked her about her personal experience with bike theft in her time as an operations manager, and she told me about the store's Earn a Bike program. A program where people without any transportation, particularly homeless people, can work for a day and get a bike for free. The idea is this would potentially help them get a reliable transportation to jobs or a safer living place. Vicky told me about a few heartbreaking altercations involving the people who benefit from this program.
So I literally have probably had 3 in the time I've been there who have come in after they've earned their bike and everything, where they were literally bending over to pick up their belongings because that is how they live. And somebody runs up and grabs the bike and everything that was, it makes you ill. But they have no care about who it is, what it is. And they watch the convenience stores the same.
It's an issue that stretches beyond college campuses. Sure, students might be the most common victim, but these thieves, they're stealing in broad daylight. They're taking from people who have nothing else. My next question to Vicky was in regards to law enforcement and her experience with them.
So many people do not register their bikes. The police here, whether it's Hillsborough County or Tampa PD, will not even answer your call unless you have got that registered someplace and proof that it is yours.
Yeah.
They don't even come out, and so they're really no help.
I then asked her if the USF PD has ever even reached out to her in regards to finding a stolen bike, and she simply said, never. She then told me about a time that a theft occurred in her shop. There were 3 officers in the parking garage connected to the mall, and when she told them about the theft that happened only minutes ago, they told her to submit a missing bike report online. The criminal, well within range of capture, according to Vicky, and they didn't do anything. A definite element was beginning to form. While not the single underlying cause, an uncaring police force might contribute to why the thefts occur so often. Important to note, the police that Vicky spoke with are not the same ones that patrol USF campus. If the issue is an apathetic police force, USF is not the only offender. During the interview with Vicky, she mentioned that thieves steal bikes because it's easy, and they can sell them to a pawn shop for quick money. Based on what Officer Marchesano told me, that should be incredibly difficult to do. I called the Value Pawn and Jewelry Shop on East Fletcher Avenue to ask them about bike theft. I had a phone interview with Armand John, an employee at the store. I told him about the USF bike registration and asked him if the store had ever ran the serial numbers on a bike to find out it was stolen.
No. So every property has serial numbers. Like even outside of I guess whatever USF does, like any bike has a serial number on it. So it's not like specific that we'll do like a USF property that we'll do anything else. But like any property that isn't a person's property, it cannot pawn. So like that's a red flag right there, man. So like unless like y'all putting something on that says like USF property, like there's no way to distinguish a serial number from any other serial number.
According to the employee, the shops don't actually run serial numbers, nor do they have to. Not unless the owner's name is overt, like the bike saying it's property of USF. I had to ask him, how many times do police departments reach out concerning stolen bikes?
I mean, yeah, like I said, stuff like that happens all the time. Like that's, unfortunately, that's the one aspect of the name of the game.
Unfortunately, Armand couldn't tell me how often police are able to retrieve stolen bikes from his pawn shop, but the information was still very telling. I wanted to gauge the interactions between police officials and pawn shops further, so I made a call to another Value Pawn and Jewelry, this one on Nebraska Avenue. This time I spoke with Wayne Spicer, an employee like Armand. Spicer was by far the quickest interview I'd done. Aside from the pleasantries, I asked him one question, and I'll play our short conversation in its entirety now. So has the University of South Florida ever reached out to you guys concerning a stolen bike?
No.
No? They've never put out serial numbers asking if you guys have gotten a stolen bike from the university?
No.
Some contradiction with what Armand said, but in line with quotes from Vicky. Maybe there isn't anyone actively holding these pawn shops accountable. Not to mention, there are numerous pawn shops in close proximity to USF, at least 3 within just 5 miles. There wasn't really a way for me to check this, but Maybe another factor adding to the theft is the market size. A lot of places to potentially sell bikes to. The last place I could go for solid information were student victims. At the beginning of the story, Officer Marchesano had spoken about registration and how important it was. Vicky said the same thing, claiming that officers wouldn't even put in the time of day if your bike wasn't registered somewhere. So I talked to students who were victims of bike theft, some registered and some not. Brandon Sawyer is a student who had their bike stolen outside of the library. Brandon's interaction with the campus police went as such.
They investigated, and that same night, they got back to me and they said that they had seen the perpetrators, and it was like a 5-minute clip the lock and run, and that they looked like they came from off the campus, so there was nothing they could really do unless something turned up in a bike shop somewhere.
I then asked if the police mentioned that they would look around for the bike or try the number, anything to reassure that they were going to work to get it back. Brandon told me no, they didn't. They didn't even ask for the serial number to look it up. My last question to Brandon was how they felt about the officers and how they conducted themselves.
Kind of lackluster, and what they had told me about, the locks being like not a good lock to have, I felt like I had never heard of that before, and I still haven't seen anybody mentioning it anywhere in any of the bike areas around. So I feel like they could be more proactive with the safety, and I'm feeling like they're not doing a good enough job, at least, of helping people prevent it.
I then spoke with Lily Winsong, a student at USF who graduated last spring. Her bike was not registered at the university.
I was a transfer student, and so I feel like because of that, I missed out on a lot of the things that you should do. When I reported it to campus police, they pretty much said, well, you should have learned all of this in your orientation. But I went to transfer orientation, but they didn't say a single thing about bike anything. Not at all. They didn't say to register it. They were like, well, you should have known to have a U-lock. They tell everybody. They didn't say a single thing about that. There was nothing about bike safety or anything in the transfer orientation, at least not back then. They asked me if I had the serial number for my bike. Unfortunately, I got my bike used, so I had no account for the serial number. And even though they had camera footage, a very clear shot of the man's face that stole my bike, they told me there was nothing they could do for me. They told me they would see if it popped up, but don't wait for a call. And they pretty much said, forget about it, you're never going to see it again. Sorry, there's nothing we can do.
Once again, miseducation. Officer Marchesano mentioned that one of the best ways to prevent bike theft was to be educated. However, Lily's experience contradicts a lot of what USF is supposed to do. The clear picture of the man's face wasn't posted anywhere, and no make or model was ever asked. I asked Lily about her experience with the officers.
It was especially frustrating because, according to the security footage, my bike was stolen at 4:12 in the afternoon. I was supposed to go on break at 4 o'clock. I went on break at 4:15, and then I went to go eat outside. So I ended up finding out my bike was stolen about 10 minutes after it happened.
And just like with Vicky, the officer shows what Lily described as a frustrating lack of initiative. After Lily, I spoke with one more student victim, Jacob Ramirez. A junior at USF, Jacob's bike was not registered, but he was, however, using a U-lock when the theft happened. I asked him to describe the reporting process.
So I had the people who had the security cameras in the area look at the footage. I called the police. They made their way over here. They filed a police report. They took me home, and that was the last thing I ever heard from them.
Very similar to everyone else, the theft occurs and the police tell the victim right away it's a lost cause. I wanted to know if the officers asked him about whether or not his bike was registered, to which he said,
They did not, actually.
My final question was if anything stood out to him during the conversation with the officers.
Particularly his apathy stuck out to me. It did not seem like he cared at all. Like just, another day, another bike. He took me home, and I appreciate that, but,
After going over all the records and interviews, I had come to my conclusion. The problem was incredibly complex. Shocker, I know. But seriously, bike thefts go through so many uncontrollable avenues that a lot of things would have to change in order for any real impact to be felt. Changes in pawn shops, the USFPD, and students themselves would have to be made. Where to begin is a tricky thing to figure out, but I believe that all factors point towards student education being the first step. Officer Marchesano and Vicky both had strong emphasis on bike theft stemming from opportunity, and two of the victims I interviewed had chain locks. It could be said that better education might have made a difference in Brandon and Lily keeping their bikes safe. If students were more informed about securing their bikes, maybe thieves wouldn't see the university as such an easy spot anymore. The second step is the USFPD. It's one thing to have all these theft prevention systems in place, but it's another to actually put them into practice. Officer Marchesano is very passionate on this issue, and I don't doubt for 1 minute the sincerity of that passion. But interviews made it clear, not all members of the police force share this passion, and that's the big problem. Fear of pursuer or fear of being caught could potentially play a big role in deterring thieves, but if the police don't care enough to pursue anything, then criminals have nothing to fear, even if they show their entire face on camera. I understand that officers have a lot of responsibilities, and I'm not trying to say that they're being lazy or don't have other pressing matters. I am saying that their apathy towards the situation plays a role, not only in thieves getting away, but in lack of faith between students and officers. After that, possible actions become fewer. I don't even know where to begin on making pawn shops more accountable, but it's definitely a part of the problem. But like I said before, the first step is fixing the problem at its source and then working up from there. These changes would take a lot of time, and results would come slow, but so long as people remain dedicated to fixing the issue, change will come. Thank you for listening, and please, if you or someone you know aren't properly educated in bike theft prevention, please call your local university police department and ask for help. This has been Thomas Olet, reporting for USF.